Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine as if someone or something is watching you, even when you're alone? Picture this. It's a typical evening ensconced within the familiar walls of your home. The hustle and bustle of the day has subsided, and you're relishing in the tranquility of a quiet night. The clock ticks on as if counting down to an event unknown. Suddenly, the air seems to grow dense, and an uninvited chill creeps into the room, seeping into your bones, making the hairs on the back of your neck stand on end. You shiver, pulling your sweater tighter around you, but the coldness is not of this world. It's as if an invisible icy hand has reached out from the ether, touching everything, turning the warmth of your home into a frozen tableau. The lights, once steady, begin to flicker, a staccato rhythm in the encroaching darkness. The comforting hum of electricity is replaced by a disquieting silence, broken only by the occasional crackle of the bulb fighting against the invading cold. It's as if the life force of your home is being drained, replaced by an eerie stillness that is as unnatural as it is unsettling. The silence is deafening, pressing against your eardrums, the world outside your window seeming to fade away. You strain your ears, hoping for a familiar sound, a sign of normalcy, but all you hear is the echo of your own heartbeat, a frantic drumbeat in the quiet night. The unease creeps up on you, a sense of dread that is palpable. It's as if you're no longer alone in your own home. You feel watched, a prey under the gaze of a predator lurking in the shadows. You look around, your eyes scanning the darkness, searching for the source of your fear. And then, from the corner of my eye, I saw it. A shadowy figure lurking in the darkness. There it was. A shadowy figure, standing in the corner of my room, just watching me. The dark form seemed to blend in with the surrounding murkiness, like a specter birthed from the very fabric of the night. Its outline was vague, blurry, as if constantly shifting between forms, never settling on a definitive shape. It was a silhouette of terror, a phantom of the unknown. This figure was tall, unnaturally so. It towered over everything in the room, its inhuman stature casting an even greater shadow, a darkness that seemed to consume the little light that dared to exist. It was as if the figure was not merely a form, but a void, a black hole pulling in all the brightness and hope, leaving only fear and despair. The silence it bore was the most disturbing of all. It was a silence that was not just the absence of noise, but something far more sinister. It was the silence that comes before the storm, the silence that fills a graveyard, the silence that echoes in the deepest corners of a nightmare. It was an oppressive silence, a silence that weighed heavy on the heart, leaving one gasping for breath. As I stared at this figure, a growing sense of dread washed over me, seeping into my bones. It was a fear that was primal, raw, a fear that knew no reason or logic. It was the fear of the night, of the unknown, of the monsters that lurk in the dark. My heart pounded in my chest, a wild drum echoing the rhythm of my terror. The figure just stood there in the corner of my room, watching, observing. It did not move, it did not speak, it just watched. The minutes turned into an eternity, each second a lifetime of fear. And then, as suddenly as it had appeared, it vanished. It just stood there, watching until it suddenly vanished, leaving me in the chilling silence. I thought it was over, but little did I know, it was just the beginning. In the hushed hours that followed my shadowy encounter, I could feel a shift in the atmosphere around me. An eerie silence had enveloped the house, as if the very walls were holding their breath. The air was heavy, thick with a sense of foreboding I couldn't shake off. It started subtly at first. Objects around me began to move of their own accord, as if possessed by some unseen force. My coffee cup would slide across the table, a book would fall off the shelf, the curtains would flutter even when the windows were closed. It felt as though an invisible hand was teasing me, playing a chilling game of cat and mouse. Then came the whispers. Every night, as the clock struck midnight, I could hear them, faint hushed tones that echoed in the darkness, speaking in a language I couldn't comprehend. They seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, all at once. It was like a chorus of the damned, their voices weaving together to form a symphony of terror that filled the silent night. And if that wasn't enough, I started to feel it too, the touch. A cold, spectral hand that would brush against my skin, leaving a trail of goosebumps in its wake. It was as if someone, or something, was trying to reach out to me from the other side. A shiver would run down my spine each time I felt it, a chilling reminder of the unseen presence that now shared my space. Every day was a nerve-wracking ordeal, a ticking time bomb of paranormal activity. I could feel my sanity fraying at the edges, the relentless haunting pushing me closer and closer to the brink, but nothing could have prepared me for what was to come next. And then, one night I woke up to find a note on my bedside table. In the dim light, I could barely make out the words on the note. A piece of parchment, aged and worn, lay in front of me. Its edges were frayed, and the color had faded to a grim shade of yellow. The texture felt rough under my fingertips, almost as if it had been weathered by time itself. But the most unsettling aspect of it all was not the state of the note, but the message it carried. As my eyes strained to decipher the cryptic message, a sense of unease began to creep up my spine. The words were jumbled, seemingly nonsensical, yet they held a familiarity that I couldn't place. The sentences were haphazardly scrawled across the page, their arrangement as chaotic as the thoughts they seemed to represent. With each word, the eeriness grew. It was as if the note had a life of its own, its aura radiating a chilling sense of foreboding. Every line, every word, every letter seemed to be whispering a warning into my ear, a warning I was struggling to comprehend. And then, in a moment of chilling realization, I recognized the handwriting. It was mine. My heart pounded in my chest like a drum, each beat echoing the shock that coursed through my veins. The familiarity that had been nagging at the back of my mind finally made sense. But how could it be? I had no memory of ever writing this note, let alone the ominous message it carried. The room seemed to close in around me, the walls whispering the same cryptic message over and over again. The world spun, and I found myself sinking into the chair, my mind racing to make sense of the impossible. The note, the message, the handwriting. It was all a riddle wrapped in an enigma, a puzzle that seemed to have no solution. And then, as if the universe itself was playing some cruel joke, the words rearranged themselves in my mind. The cryptic message was no longer a jumble of words, but a clear, concise warning. The note read, "They are watching you." I stared at the note, my heart pounding in my chest. The words on that crumpled piece of paper seemed to echo in my mind, each syllable pounding against my skull like a relentless drum. The world around me narrowed to a pinpoint, and for a moment, everything else ceased to exist. There was a growing sense of dread, a gnawing paranoia that clawed at the edges of my sanity. Each creak of the house, each gust of wind against the window, each shadow that flickered in the corner of my eye. They all seemed to whisper the same chilling message. Each day blended into the next, a disorienting haze of fear and uncertainty. I tried to rationalize, to find some logical explanation for what was happening. Maybe it was just a prank, a sick joke played by some twisted individual. Maybe it was all in my head, the result of too many late-night horror movies and not enough sleep. But the more I tried to convince myself, the more the fear took hold. The nights were the worst. Each one was a marathon of terror, a gruesome spectacle that played out in the darkness. I could feel the presence of the shadowy figure, always lurking just out of sight. Its eyes seemed to bore into me, a silent threat that hung in the air like a guillotine. It was always there, always watching, always waiting. But the most unsettling revelation was yet to come. It was not just the shadowy figure that haunted my nights. It was not alone. There were others, lurking in the shadows, their eyes gleaming in the darkness. They were always there, always watching. A silent chorus of specters that seemed to revel in my fear. The realization hit me like a punch to the gut. The world tilted on its axis, and for a moment I felt as though I was falling. The note in my hand seemed to burn against my skin, a cruel reminder of the grim reality I now faced. As I sat there, paralyzed with fear, I heard a whisper in my ear, "We are watching you."